Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to show you how to run the particle editor for Corona SDK. Assuming you've already downloaded this either from Gumroad or Selfie, go ahead and unzip the folder onto your desktop. And in this folder you should have a landscape and a portrait folder. So go ahead and open up the Corona simulator. And in this example I'm going to show you how to run the landscape version. However, if you have a tall, narrow screen, or if you're going to export this to your iPad, a tablet device, then you should run the portrait mode and use that for the export. So let's go ahead and open up the landscape folder. And double-click main. And I suggest when you view this that you view it as either GameStick 720 or Ouya 720. And then you can reduce or grow the simulator window until it takes up as much space as you have available on your screen. I'd make it as big as possible. In this case, it's about medium size for the recording. So when you open this, you should be presented with the initial particle, which is a flame, which you can drag around here. And then you should see the following interface elements. Some buttons up here, some strange looking buttons at the bottom, which we'll get to in a moment, and a slider. Also, if you look carefully here, you'll see that it says emitter settings basic, and then we've got some arrow keys. If you click on the arrow keys, it'll take you through the different settings for either the emitter or for the particles that are being ejected from the emitter, or emitted perhaps from the emitter. Now if we click on emitters, we can go ahead and say yes to this. And in landscape mode, you'll be presented with a screen that shows 10 different particle emitters, which are presets, or emitters which you have previously saved. And then if we click this right arrow here, we'll be able to go on to the next ones. The editor, as a default, comes with 12 emitters, or that is 12 base emitters from which you can derive future emitters. So for example, this is my favorite one here, number 7. If I click that, I can clone it, clicking the clone button here, and it'll take us back to the editor. And now, if I click on emitters, let's go ahead and click save just for fun. Then let's click on emitters. And if we go back, the 13th emitter, which is the one that was just created when we cloned, should look exactly like 7. So let's just go ahead and click that and say edit. It's worth noting that, take you back here, if I click on one of the earlier ones, the first 12 emitters only give you the option to clone the emitter or to cancel and go back to the editor. However, once you've started creating emitters, you can edit the emitter, you can clone it again, or you can choose to delete it. And I'm going to go ahead and choose a new emitter this time. So let's go ahead and clone this little fire waterfall. So we've got a little fire waterfall on our screen, or perhaps whatever you'd like to call it. What we can do now is change our particles. Let's go ahead and select the particles button. The tool comes with, I believe it is, 42 particles, which you can change. Most particle emitters use this first particle here, although you may find it useful to take a look at some other options. Let's try the dye. As you can see, that really changes up how the particle emitter works and what it looks like. It looks a little bit busy. Let's go ahead and try another one. Let's use, how about this one here? This is probably pretty good for that, and that looks a little bit better. So as you're working with this, things you can do, you can drag around the particles, or the emitter that is. You can click redraw, although every time you change one of these fields, which we'll get to in a moment, it automatically redraws. The purpose of redraw is really, if you go back to the base screen here, and let's locate it. Yes, duration. So typically the duration for all the particle emitters that you're editing will be -1. -1 is telling this to run the emitter forever. However, in your game, it may be more useful for you to have a emitter that only, let's get this back down here, that only runs for 2 seconds. And so this is going to run for 2 seconds, it's going to stop, which is great, but it makes it a little bit hard to edit. So if we choose to, let's say, reduce the number of particles by clicking that and dragging, it'll redraw for 2 seconds. And if I want to see it again, I can click redraw. So I'm going to go ahead and go back and ignore this and go ahead and reload this. And we should be back in shape here. Alright, so what else do we have available to us? We have the send and save buttons, which I'm going to address last. We have randomized, which I'm not going to do right now, and we have full screen. So it's also very helpful to, sometimes when you're working with these particle emitters, they take up more space than the editor screen. So what you want to do is you want to edit it to the best of your ability, drag it around, get a good look at it, and then go full screen. In this case, full screen doesn't tell us a whole lot extra about the emitter, although we can drag it up now and see that the particles are in fact water falling down quite a bit further than we saw earlier. So this is basically just a preview mode to help you get a better idea of how well your emitter is working. So let's go ahead and click the X here to close this. And let's go ahead and start off with Randomize. So Randomize is just what you would expect. If I click this button, what's going to happen is every randomizable particle and emitter setting in all of these menus will get changed. So if we do this, we don't know what we're going to get. It could be something really wonky, or it could be something just terrible. So that's kind of nice looking. So let's go ahead and take that. Let's go back to the emitter settings page. You'll notice that on several of the panes there is an L button and an R button. The L is the lock button. So if I click the lock button and then if I click randomize, what will happen is none of the values on this page will be randomized. So let's go ahead and lock down a couple of pages. In fact, let's lock down everything except for the colors. And we're on the colors page. We'll leave that unlocked. And if I click randomize, you'll see that the values here are all changing. And then to confirm that this is in fact working, let's go back to the emitters page, which is locked. And when we click randomize, none of these should change. However, you may find that you would like to lock things down and you're having fun with the general randomize button. But then you'd like to experiment with one page, or perhaps you're not locking at all and you just want to do a bit-by-bit sort of randomization. So several of these panes or pages have their own R button, which is a randomized for this page only. So what we can do, regardless of whether it's locked, is randomize just these values. So let's go ahead and click R a few times. And we got a gravity emitter there. We got another gravity emitter, which is kind of boring, and another radial, which looks a lot like what we had before. So let's go ahead and try something else. Let's go to the radial page. It's worth noting, if you're not familiar with this, there are two basic types of emitters. There's the radial and the gravity. And on the subsequent panes here, or pages, depending on how you like to think of it, there are the gravity settings and then the radial settings. As this is a radial emitter, changing the values on this page will have no effect. Of course, now I do that. Yes, I forgot. However, it does in fact redraw the emitter when you click randomize. So let's go ahead and go to the radial page and play with the settings here. Not good, not good, a little more interesting. Let's leave that. So what do we have left? I'm not going to go through all the different particle settings and whatnot. I'm going to leave it to you to experiment. I think that for the most part these are fairly self-explanatory with regards to what each of the settings does. Let's see, what else? Now one nice feature that I find works with a mouse, perhaps not so much on the iPad or any of the smaller screen devices that is smaller than your desktop screen, is a color picker. So we can choose one of these parameters here. That is, I'm sorry, we don't choose this. We choose, let's say, to change the color start to red. And we can just drag around in here. And let's say we want it to end off red. And then we want it to finish in blue, and we want, oh, I'm sorry. So we do the start color as red, and we don't want that to vary at all. What we would do is choose black. What that's saying is start at red and always start at red. Don't randomize around the start value. Similarly, let's go ahead and finish on yellow and tell it not to randomize between or at the ending point. So now this should transition across the same basic colors over and over again. The pickers are nice because what you can do is you can quickly play around with values, and then once you see something you are pretty happy with, you can go onto the color settings page and tune these things up a little bit more manually. Let's see what else. Alright, so the only thing that's really left is to go ahead and get some particle emitters out of this thing. First of all, don't forget to save early and save often, otherwise you may in fact lose your work. And then, once you're ready to go ahead and test this thing, which we'll do in another video, but let's do the export part first. Go ahead and click on Send. Now, if you're on the iPad or if you're on your Android device, this is going to open an email client, and attached to the email will be two files. One ending with a .rg extension, which is the emitter definition, and a PNG file, which will be whatever particle was that you chose here. So let's click Send. In this case, on the simulator, what's going to happen is the file is going to get put on your hard drive. So when I click Send, nothing interesting happened, or seemed to. But if we click File, and we locate the sandbox, now this will be a little different for OS X users. Your file menu is at the top, and at this moment I don't remember if the sandbox folder or menu item is under File or under a different one of the menu items. Anyways, you should be able to locate it. There's only 3 or 4 of them. I'll go ahead and open the project sandbox, and what you should see under there is a documents directory and a temp directory. Now when you press the send button, your emitter, your current emitter, and the particle that goes in that emitter will be exported to the temporary folder. So if you click on temp, you should see a .rg extension and a .png. And to prove that, let's go ahead and delete these. And I will drag this off screen so it stays in the video. And if I click Send, I should get 2 files, the emitter definition and the particle. Alright, so that's it for this video. In the next video that I will show you how to take the emitter and the particle and using the PEX tools to test it quickly to see that it is in fact working for your game. Alright, thanks a lot.